Hey guys, you ever feel like just the absolute biggest idiot possible? I do. I just recorded an entire 12-minute video talking constantly where I could not be heard over the music. So let's do take two, huh? It's more like take five, if we're being honest. Anybody? So this is my explanation, kind of the process developing characters for the new season of Asterism. They're all characters that I have written about before, but I've never drawn them and never really thought about what they would look like aside from basic descriptions. I may go over some of those later in the video if I have time between my off-topic ramblings. But without further ado, let's get started. So our first character is Aaron, who, embarrassingly, his name has changed in spelling since I recorded this time lapse. It's Aerin at the moment. So Aaron is a Athena blessed, as in he has the abilities of the goddess Athena. There is a lot of lore behind this, which I explained quite in depth recently in the most recent chapter, or Q&A chapter of Asterism. That was my kind of interim in between going into the new season. So his ability is the ability of perception, which is based on the epithet Athena the Owl-Eyed from Greek mythology, where he essentially has really good vision for telling what people are doing when they're attacking, but he doesn't have much athletic ability, so he relies on essentially being a trickster type character in battle. However, he is a very joyous character. I really like him. He's kind of cutie, and I wanted his design to reflect that. I did feel like at certain points his eye shape made him look a little unhinged, but I really wanted to reference that kind of traditional owl shape. As you can see, I worked a lot on trying to make sure that he kept this innocent look while also having that sharpness and also roundness of an owl. I experimented a bit with facial markings, like owls always have, and ended up with those freckle marks across his nose, like spotted owls. His color palette also referenced burrowing owls, which I just think are the cutest things to kind of, because I thought he was a cute character. Anyway, we're moving on to Xander. He is a Demeter Blessed, which is not very well respected in the Athens Guard Force, especially as his specific ability is the ability to accelerate flower growth. Having said that, he takes his role very seriously and has worked hard to make his power useful for him. When I was designing him, I struggled a lot with making him look like other characters. They were all kind of the military type, so there's obviously a look I gravitate towards for that. Ares in particular, he looked very similar to until I settled on this hairstyle. And I also think that the color palette with the pink, which is inspired by gladiolus flowers, to fit him quite well. I moved on to his drawing, and again, it's kind of a struggle to make him look serious while also being a relatively cute character, which kind of again reflects that fact that his ability is a cute one, so to speak, even though he as a character is very serious. He's also very good friends with Aaron, and his first introduction is in fact through Aaron's gaze. He's described with his popped open collar and his serious demeanor. Arguably, Aaron is his only friend on the force, as nobody else quite likes Xander or respects him. At this point, you might have noticed that the design of their clothing is very similar, and that's because all of the guard in Athens have the Vermelli design, which references a traditional kind of ceremonial Greek costume that's used for military type stuff. I wish I could explain it better. I definitely could, but at the moment I'm kind of floundering to keep up. Again, this is a very chaotic review of my process, which is also in and of itself very chaotic. You may have noticed just then I darkened Aaron's skin color because I like that contrast between them, and also I thought it fit the owl look a little more, and I thought it made his hair and everything, all the color palette, especially his orange eyes, pop out. Now moving on to Alista, she is the captain of the guard, and although she takes her role very seriously, she is a very joyous and boisterous character. She is Ares blessed, which is very traditional for the guard, but it's her hard work and weapons training that allowed her to take her role. She's described as having choppy hair and being lean and very tall. She's also the first person who questions Asteria on her arrival to Athens to ensure that she's not a threat. As you can see, this design reminded me quite a bit of a certain other character. We're going to ignore that and recolor it. Here I was trying out a couple different color palettes to see what would work best in terms of contrast and legibility on the page. A few of my drawings with Delphi, who has actually quite a fair bit of lighter skin color than Alista, turns out quite difficult to see on the comic, so I wanted to try and make sure that it remained this legibility. She's also one of the older characters in her mid to late 20s, kind of the same age as Delphi, as opposed to the main cast, which are typically around 19 in age. Both Xander and Aaron are 19. Again, she's wearing the vermilion, and hers is crimson, which exemplifies her rank. I also worked a bit on her shield design. I struggled a bit with it because it's not something I've tried before, but the end design I quite liked. Here I kind of went off topic and worked on figuring out the uniform that they would wear. Originally, the designs above me were what have been the school uniform for a very long time, but when I decided that the guards would also wear the formeli, it became a little difficult to distinguish them. While it's true that a lot of people in the guard are also in school, or rather, sorry, everyone in school. Wow, I can't say anything right. Everyone in the guard is also in school, as in Athens, it is a requirement to attend school regardless of age or education level. So having said that, the school that Asteria ended up going to is specifically for the guard, and so I wanted there to be some distinction between just students in the guards, and what the guards wear when they're actually on active duty. That's when I ended up settling on the formeli, and ways to kind of distinguish it. I also looked at gakurans and things like, oh, that was not a good pronunciation, things like that. I worked a lot on looking at like the silhouettes and patterns, although most likely the patterns will be greatly simplified for the final comic. I looked at various things from formelis, paintings, ancient Greek clothing, philosophers at one point, and so forth to try and get this thing that was essentially Greek, but not quite accurate because it is eventually, ultimately a fantasy world, and I want the designs to not only be distinct, but also be very interesting. Probably drawing off screen somewhere right now. Here we go. As you can see, two things appeared off screen. I really like that second one in the middle because it had this kind of random chain thing in the reference image, which worked very well for me as I tend to like adding that even though it never makes sense. But hey, if it exists in reality, that's good enough for me. As you can see, I moved on at this point to traditional ancient Greek inspired armor. At the moment, this hasn't been directly included in any designs, but I do hope to have a point where some of the characters can wear these things, perhaps in the tournament arc. This is one of my first times coloring in like bronze breastplate, and I really liked the way the kind of glow of the metal turned out, also with that contrast with the dark blue. I can credit the reference image for that, however it's definitely something that I'd like to try and incorporate. Again, just a lot of different designs that I can kind of pick and choose and get these various ideas from them. Unfortunately, I do think that this white one over here may have been an AI-generated image that I referenced, in which case, at least I'm stealing from it, I guess, but I will say I do quite hate AI. Let's just ignore that for now. This breastplate that I'm drawing over here, I ended up really proud of it because I really loved the way the metal turned out, and I'll definitely be referencing it when I come back to drawing breastplates in the future. Here I'm moving on to Edicere. He is the dean, essentially, of the academy that Asteria attends, and he's quite money-grubbing, shall we say, but also a very cheerful person and very strict following the rules. He is blessed by Hephaestus, and he has the ability of metallurgy. For his design, I referenced Greek philosophers, the formeli, and kind of just this professor aesthetic. I thought it was very clever, shall we say, the way I turned this robe you can see the professor in this image into a scarf, whereas the colors also references Athena, as while most people would have something referencing their blessing, he prefers to honor the lady of their city. Here's just a height comparison, and kind of And here we see I jumped back into figuring out the uniform because I previously abandoned it. I think I got stuck, shall we say. And as you can see, the guard ended up being the traditional Formelli with that cool construction, which I hadn't really looked at before I did these drawings. And then ultimately I decided, at least for now, that the school concept will probably simply be the Formelli with a different color skirt, pant, and undershirt. Whereas the unranked students will be wearing something without any of the embroidery. Something more simple and plain and reflecting of their status not being the guard. The guard can also accessorize with capes and breastplates under different circumstances, as well as probably the Corinthian helmets. I'll be moving on to actually drawing the arc soon, so I'll be ironing out these details, but this is where I am for now, and I hope you've enjoyed this really very chaotic look at my process, and have a great day. That was very awkward. Ignore me.